Our first movie tells the story of a friendship behind prison walls that spans more than 20 years.
Welcome to episode 36 of Middlebrow Madness, an exercise in podcast hubris. My name is Derek Godai.
My name is Isabel Arf. Derek.
Oh, baby, we're back!
As a great man once said, it's been a while.
Oh, man. Is that great man Aaron Lewis?
How are you?
Oh, man. Right back where we started, huh?
Do you see what I mean by, like, the difficulty of not having podcasting for a while? Folks, if you are listening back to this, somehow not being aware of the background of everything, if you are coming to this years later, it has been over 2 years since Derek and I have recorded together last. Also,
Yes.
I just want to say, I did not realize you knew the lead singer of Stain's name off the top of your head.
Man, I was an angsty teenager when Stained was at its hottest, so you better believe I know who Aaron Lewis is.
Okay, I mean, hey. But yeah, this is a podcast.
Yeah,
we're working on it.
Against the best wishes of our attorneys and our haters, we are back after a 25-month absence. We are back.
Wow.
What the fuck did we do on this show? Oh yes, we are back to try to figure out the best movie of all time, asterisk, from a list that is now out of date by 6 years.
5 years old.
It's
It was
6 years
2018,
old.
right?
It's 2023. Oh yeah, that's right. 5, not 6. 5.
That's why they pay me the big bucks. All the math I can do. I can
So-
subtract 23 from 18.
So I want to do a little bit of table setting before we get into anything more. 1.
Sure. Do we want to tell people why we started doing the podcast again?
Why? Okay.
Yeah.
For fun?
You
You had a good idea?
Yes, for fun, for all those kinds of things. I, had a lot of things happen. As I mentioned, as Derek and I were talking about, this podcast had approximately 50% more parents last time
That's
we
correct.
spoke, which, deters you from podcasting for a minute because you have other things to focus on.
Mhm.
Also, I went through a lot of things, and then the things got better, but then the problem is, and when they were better, is that I had partners who lived about an hour away from me, and as much as I love doing this podcast, I prioritized love over podcasts. But now I can have both because I live with my partners, so.
And honestly, good call. I've had a weird medical 18 months. Those who know. Nothing serious, just weirdness. My life at no point has been in danger, but I have gotten just the weirdest run of ailments. So, yeah, I mean, like, the idea of the podcast, this is what I tell Isabel, is that, like, this is for fun. Like, this shouldn't be an obligation. And it stopped being fun, because there's other stuff happening. There's other stuff to attend to.
Yeah.
But now we're back. We are giving this another try.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this, do not take this as a promise that we're going to have a consistent schedule.
Nope.
I promise nothing. I would like to get back into a consistent schedule, but as soon as I make that a promise, it's going to be fucking stressful, and this is literally the opposite of the point of doing this.
We are
supposed to be,
in for the
goofs.
long haul.
Yes, if we are 80 getting through our second round, then that's how it will be. I'll pass it off to my children, by which I mean my pets, because not having any of those kids, they seem difficult.
We'll have our very own, what's the name of the podcast where some dudes watch Paul Blart 2? Till Death Do Us Blart. Yes.
Till Death Do Us Blart.
Yes.
I think you call them some dudes.
Well, you know.
The McElroy brothers and the two people from The Worst Idea of All Time.
That's right.
Very, very popular podcast, to be clear.
Our idea is not the worst idea of all time, but we did give ourselves a lot of work because even now, it's 2023. We started this show a long time ago. We are barely past the halfway mark of round one. Round one of what you say? Well, I'm glad you asked. The whole gimmick of this podcast is a 256 film bracket. We've taken the IMDb Top 250 circa August 2018, put them in a bracket with 6 other movies that we determined worthy of being in the bracket, paired them off, and one by one, we are going to assess the matchup, declare a winner, until we get to the greatest movie of all time, Asterisk. There's vetoes here because this is a 2-person operation, and if my memory serves me correctly, I believe I have 2 vetoes left, and Isabel has 1. And it's basically a free vote that stacks, because if we come to an impasse, we don't agree on something, we need something to break the tie. And we are going to get, we had 4 at the beginning of this round, we'll have 3 in the next round, 2 in the third round, and then 1 in each subsequent round.
Yes. But yeah, no, definitely wanted to get back into doing it. I like doing it. Also, I don't know if I told you, Derek, but we did get an email that kind of inspired me to get back into things.
Oh, okay. Also,
I think Derek can sense there's a joke coming. We got an email from a young man who said he was really inspired by the podcast.
Uh-oh.
His name was Tetsuya Yamagami. And he said, you know what? You finally inspired me to get off my ass and assassinate Shinzo Abe.
Oh my god.
And I want to inspire more people to assassinate world leaders.
Here we go.
God, that is, can we just, let me level with everyone. That was a joke, FBI. I didn't actually get an email from him. Or I guess the FBI wouldn't really care. Japanese FBI. That's probably a term for that. I don't know enough about the world, so it's fine. But can we just say, real quick, that is one of my favorite assassinations in the modern era? It's the best.
I will say
both method and like he should have done it when Shinzo Abe was still prime minister, but you know, a little late to the game. But still, he still got a touchdown. He still succeeded in his goal, and apparently is incredibly politically successful because now the Unification Church is losing a ton of its political ties that it had in Japan. So who says that killing like politicians doesn't do anything?
The only thing I'm going to say about this, because I don't want to end up in fucking prison, is that
his gun was cool as hell.
He built the gun. It's a pretty good feat of engineering. And I'll say that.
That's hard work. This is the problem in America. The reason that it's bad for us to have as easy access to guns as we have is because it makes it too simple to assassinate. You have to really want it in Japan. You have to like really be like, you know what? I'm going to learn enough electrical engineering that I can make this thing that will kill an old man.
We were gone for 25 months, and the thing that you greet me with is the assassination of Shinzo Abe.
I mean, it was one of my favorite things that happened during those months. I will say other good things. I think you'll agree with this one, is Alex Jones got fucking dunked on in court.
Oh, yeah.
I believe largest single settlement in the history of like civil court.
It is an absurd
he lost. Yeah, it was like over $1 billion for telling blatant lies about Sandy Hook and getting the parents and responders harassed for years and years and years. If you are not already a fan, listen to Knowledge Fight. You should already be listening to Knowledge Fight. Go back and listen to their deposition episodes. They are delightful. And you can hear from one of the lawyers because he's actually been on there a couple times. Very fascinating situation. But in a world of so many terrible things happening, in a world where I have to know information about Ron DeSantis against my will, it's nice to know that at least Alex Jones got completely fucked.
The more things change, the more things stay the same.
Yeah, and crypto's basically dead. That's been interesting. Which means I had to fucking shunt a ton of the great links I had in my bookmarks file.
Are you telling me that girlfriend.finance didn't make it to 2023?
I actually haven't checked in on them recently. Maybe they're doing great. Maybe they are the one NFT that is still going as strong as it was. Because you can't put a price on love.
Love? Yeah.
In NFT form. But the one I did want to just mention, because I think it's fucking hilarious, is when crypto investors reinvented Hajj. I don't know if you heard about this.
I have no idea what this is.
Are you aware of what Hajj is?
I know that it is a word in Scrabble that I could play. Alternate spelling. The Hajj, as in the pilgrimage to Mecca.
Yes. So crypto investors basically reinvented that because there's a 1,784 pound cube of tungsten in Willowbrook, Illinois, and a bunch of crypto people bid on the right to go and touch it. Essentially, it wouldn't be shipped to you. You had to go to it to touch it. So you basically had to go across the country or across the world if you were from a different country just to touch the large cube, which is, in a very vulgar way, exactly what Hajj is. I think that's delightful, and I'm excited for Cyber Islam to start soon. But the one thing I did actually really genuinely want to, for people who haven't heard the podcast before, I usually start with a fun little internet thing.
Fun's doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
Links to blogs, information about people who make replicas of bald eagles, things like this. And I will say, if you're a fan of Trash Future, you've heard this already, but the phrase is so delightful, and I want to introduce our fans to it as well. Derek, are you familiar with what hooning is?
Is that H-O-O-N-I-N-G?
H-O-O-N-I-N-G, yes.
Is that when someone cosplays the late lead singer of Blind Melon?
That's I love that poll, and I love that I understood it, but not quite.
Damn it.
It is like an Australian term for a person who like drives recklessly, drives dangerously, usually to like in a very ostentatious way, let's say. And that is a hoon. They enact hooning. They engage in hooning. And now that you have that information, I can read this delightful headline. Gender reveal hoon nabbed by police, slapped with more than 260 offenses. Police allege the 22-year-old was involved in 2 separate hoon gender reveals. Which is where the driver does a burnout to reveal what color the smoke on his wheels are, to announce the gender of the unborn child.
This sounds like people just reinventing doing donuts in the parking lot to Freebird.
Oh yeah, 100%. Just like in a more organized and Australian fashion.
God.
And I find it delightful. I want to meet the gender reveal hoon. I want to shake his hand. Because I think that he did a good thing. You know, usually I'm not a big gender reveal person. But I can support anything that has such good mouthfeel as the phrase gender reveal hoon. And also enjoy the fact that the police called the gender reveals bizarre and illegal.
Bizarre, definitely.
So that, with that stowed away in our little box of tricks, what is it we're here to talk about today, Derek?
Nominally, this is a movie podcast. I did want to ask you to say the word non-binary in your most offensive Australian accent.
Oh, God. Non-binary?
Oh, boy. Non-binary.
See, the only thing I can say in Australian accent is cocaine, because I really enjoy that they say it like that. Sorry to all of our Australian listeners. All like one of you. How many people exist in Australia? Australia's probably not even real when you think about it.
I mean,
it's just a fun, goofy place where they put the spiders.
What is a country? But
Derek, that's too big of a question for us to answer today.
That's a bit outside of the scope of our podcast. I certainly am not smart enough to answer that, but what I am smart enough to answer is what the fuck this show's about. We are nominally a movie podcast. We talk about the supposed 250 best movies of all time according to the users of the Internet Movie Database. And every episode, we go through 2 matchups, 4 movies per episode. You can do the math as to when we'll end up even finishing round 1. You can look at our archives, all of our previous episodes with our fucking 2-year-old takes and jokes and whatever. But right now, we have 2 matchups that we're going to see. We're going to talk about both movies a little bit, what we thought about them. And we're going to declare one the winner. And that winner moves on to round 2, lives to fight on another day. And the other one joins the loser pile with every David Fincher movie in the bracket. Don't think I've fucking forgotten. So let's get to it. This feels weird. This feels new.
It does. It does. It feels like, like learning to walk all over again.
Oh, man. Well, hopefully I don't fucking face
Gotta walk
doing
before you
this.
can podcast.
Yes, in a very real sense. Our first matchup tonight. The the 117 seed, Some Like It Hot, released in 1959, directed by Billy Wilder, written by Billy Wilder and I.A.L. Diamond, based on the Richard Putsey film Fanfare of Love, released in 1935, starring Marilyn Monroe, Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon, Joe E. Brown, and George Raft. $2.9 million budget, $49 million take, so a genuine hit, a popular film. 1 for 6 at the Oscars. I believe it won costuming, black and white, and is currently tied for 38th place on the 2022 Sight and Sound list. Versus the 140 seat On the Waterfront, released in 1954, directed by Elia Kazan, written by Bud Schulberg, starring Marlon Brando, Carl Malden, Lee J. Cobb, Rod Steiger, and Ava Marie Saint. $910,000 budget, $9.6 million take. So, again, a hit. 9 for 12 at the Oscars. I think the only category it didn't win was Best Supporting Actor because in a Godfather-esque turn of events, 3 actors nominated for Best Supporting Performance. We'll talk about those because those performances are quite good, in my opinion. I didn't have any extra stats on this, but it's a pretty well-respected film by a filmmaker with a complicated legacy. We'll get to that.
You are being very kind to him.
I'm leaving the hotter takes for when we actually talk about the film.
That's fair. So should we talk about the good one first?
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, let's talk about Some Like It Hot. I saw this movie even before we had to watch it for the podcast all those years ago. And I like Billy Wilder. I really like Jack Lemmon as an actor. I don't have much of a relationship to Marilyn Monroe, but I acknowledge her presence. I acknowledge her place in the canon of American comedy, of American performance. But I can't think of a person whose opinions I care less about when it comes to Some Like It Hot than my own. I'm really, really, really interested in what you think about this fucking movie.
I mean, Jack Lemmon's just like me for real, is all I have to say. This movie is... When I first was going to watch it, all those years ago, multiple years at this point, I was a little bit concerned because it is a movie whose primary joke is, haha, men dressed as ladies. Although it turns out that's not actually its primary joke, which we'll get to. And like many trans people, that rubs me the wrong way quite often because that is a very common trope to be like, haha, isn't it funny, men in dress. And then I don't think it will be surprise anyone to hear that has caused negative repercussions for the public perception of trans women for as long as that has been a comedic trope. It's not super fun being seen as a joke. But I surprisingly liked it a couple years ago, and I unsurprisingly like it still, Derek. It is delightful. It's hysterical. Genuinely one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. It is just so quick, just 1, 2, 3, all the jokes are coming so quick. I was writing them down at first in my notes to be like, let me talk about these great jokes. And then by 10 minutes in, I was like, okay, I can't keep doing this because I need to watch the movie, and there's just so much here that I'm writing down. but absolutely delightful to watch. And I think that there's a lot of things that work so well for it. I mean, I think the thing that still causes it to not rub me the wrong way is just how good humored it is and not mean spirited. It is so positive and nice and weirdly queer in a lot of ways, that are shockingly, I'm shocked that they got them through in 1959 of all times. Especially like as the Hays Code was still a thing at that point. I have read this is one of the things that kind of pushed it off to the side finally, but this was released without the code certification because they would not allow this to exist under code certification. When I mentioned like the key joke isn't what you think it's going to be, it's because in my opinion, the two key jokes aren't haha men in dresses. The jokes are A, mistaken identity, classic. And B, haha, men having to deal with things women are used to dealing with.
Right.
It's much more of that as a source of humor, and the mistaken identity, like, oh, we need to keep undercover, even though there's a lot of things that are stopping us from doing that as well as we would like to. And it never really feels like the film is laughing at Tony Curtis or Jack Lemmon or Joe and Jerry, Josephine and Daphne, for dressing up. It's more that it's laughing at them for being fucking buffoons.
I agree. I think this movie's hysterical. It has been ranked. I think AFI ranked it as like the funniest film of all time, which is like, I mean, maybe you quibble with that, but I'm not pissed off at it.
Yeah, no. It's not like, there's plenty of other things that they might put there that I could see that I'd be so much more pissed at. Like if they said fucking like Animal House or some dog shit. But no, like this is an actual hysterically funny movie. Like made me laugh out loud multiple times as I was watching it, even though I knew exactly where the jokes were coming.
And you say, I want to like hone in on that thing you said about this film feeling especially modern, because we've talked about Billy Wilder movies before. We've talked about The Apartment, especially about The Apartment, which I think he goes on to make right after this. So talk about back-to-back bangers. Billy Wilder's sensibility is way ahead of the curve. Like he stays ahead of the curve for a long time, and I think that helps sort of that helps this movie separate itself from say other men in a dress movies. I think what also
You're
helps
Jack
is
and Jills.
You're Jack and Jills, sure. But I think this movie kind of lives and it doesn't live and die. This movie is definitely helped by the performance of one Jack Lemmon.
Oh, he's fucking delightful.
Who I absolutely can't believe was conceived as like this. He plays him as someone who's clearly in the closet. This is not ambiguous. Like he's not into what he's doing in like a comedic way. Is like figuring some shit out about himself. But this is like a comedy, 100%. So you might miss that. And you know, it's like not to spoil the ending or anything, but it's like, well, yeah. So I guess this is just what it is now.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. It is, you know, you don't want to read too much into movies, but it's hard not to read too much into Jack Lemmon's performance, like the way that he plays it. And like you're saying, it's not that this is, what's the way to say it? Like he's discovering things about himself, like he's learning about himself, he's learning, like he's falling in love with, what's the guy's name? Osgood Fielding III.
Yeah, that's right. The character played by Joe E. Brown.
Yes, who is also a delight. Love his giant smile.
Irrepressible positive energy.
And it never, I think the thing that works so well about the movie for me is that the film never seems judgy about him. No. Like for any of that, it never seems judgy. And I mean, I think the funny thing is that it seems judgier to Tony Curtis for lying to Marilyn Monroe.
I think you're right. You're 100% correct.
Yeah, because Tony Curtis is definitely the less sympathetic person in the duo.
Right.
He does excellent work. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, we don't like Tony Curtis as Josephine. No, we do quite a bit. Just womanizer who's, feeling his heart finally melt for the first time, and realizing towards the end that he really does care about sugarcane. And it's really sweet, I guess is a way to say it. Like, this is as a whole. I almost struggle with exactly what to put out about it because so much of it feels really well observed in all the comedy. And like when I'm half joking when I say that Jack Lemmon's just like me for real, but like so much of what he does is like, oh, I get all of this. Like the line early on where like originally he's Geraldine, but changes it to Daphne, and he says, I never liked the name Geraldine, which is delightful. The frustrated horniness, I suppose I'd say, that he has for much of the film is delightful to watch, very funny, and is very like relatable. I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but it's a good movie, Derek. I quite enjoy it.
And not like and Marilyn Monroe's really good in this movie. She's very funny.
She is, yeah. She's very, very funny.
It's like the thing with Marilyn Monroe is that she obviously like a powerful symbol, sex symbol of the era, just like an American symbol. But when you get down to it, or at least a couple of things that I've seen her in, it's just she's like a very reliable comic presence.
Yeah, I will say she plays dumb very smartly, yes, which is difficult to do.
1000%. Yeah, this movie's fucking great. I mean, this is the thing about talking about comedies, right? It's like, oh, it's fucking funny. It's like
I could list off the jokes for you, but I don't think that's going to like particularly sell people on it if they're not already sold on it.
Script's really good. It's Billy Wilder is one of the great directors, especially of the era. It's a magnificent film. What can I say?
The one problem I have with it, I will say, is that Jack Lemmon's upright bass technique, absolutely terrible. Deplorable.
Yeah. I mean, sure.
Neither of them are great at miming playing instruments. That's a very minor thing. It's more just as someone who plays upright bass, it's one of those things where if you have the knowledge base, you so directly focus on it and it's hard not to see it. Same as in like if I watch a like movie or I see like an anime where like someone's playing guitar but they're not doing it right, it immediately stands out in a way that you hear so many like astrophysicists when they watch like space movies, they're like, that's not how that actually works. It doesn't actually matter for the movie. I just wanted to be a dick about it.
Sure. So now we come to On the Waterfront.
We do.
So
I
go ahead.
I personally, this is just me, think it's bad to rat out all of your friends and put them on the Hollywood blacklist, essentially.
I mean, yes.
And complying
that
with the
bad.
House Committee on Un-American Activities, I would say generally, I'm not a fan of. I think it is bad that Elia Kazan did that.
My politics. So this is the Letterboxd review of On the Waterfront by Will Sloan of the great Important Cinema Club podcast,
and Michael and us.
Quote, my politics are that it's okay to rat on your union boss if he is corrupt and murderous, but that it's not okay to rat on your former colleagues to the HUAC when you're already an Academy Award-winning director.
I would go along with Orson Welles, where he said Kazan is a traitor and a very fine director.
Yeah. Like, this is the thing. People, like, this movie is, like, pretty immaculately made. Should we like explain what On the Waterfront is?
Sure. Are you aware of unions? And are you aware of how evil they are?
I'm familiar with the concept of unions. There's 2 of them on strike now that's relevant to our show. Yeah, Marlon Brando plays a longshoreman. There's an evil union boss, and it's a very tortured movie, and it's in its very soul, and it's really, really, really hard to not kind of see this as kind of like a mea culpa on the part of Elia Kazan, even though he didn't write it. And so it's really this thing of like, I like this movie, but there's this faint smell emanating off it just a little bit.
Yeah, it smells like a rat. Which is mean to rats. Rats are delightful. I mean, Ili Kazan is worse than any rat.
I'm looking at two of them right now in their little bungalow there.
Oh,
I like them.
The other night, I saw a video of a dog who was getting groomed, and he had like an emotional support rat with him, and I started fucking crying because it was so sweet. Here's what I'll say, is I think I have an easier time being a bitch about this movie than you will, because I realized when I was watching it, I remembered none of it. Like, it just completely slipped on my brain.
Okay. I've seen this movie like 4 times, and all of them for the podcast, basically.
I thought it was good. 3.5 stars.
I give it 4.
That's fair. I don't think that's necessarily incorrect. But it's the kind of good movie where I don't have any strong feelings of praise for it. So therefore, the background of it and the kind of rottenness of it really make it sour. And plus, like, I mean, you know what? We haven't had a hot take yet. So,
I do, right?
Yeah, my hot take is that if you ask me which Marlon Brando movie I'd rather watch, this or The Island of Dr. Moreau.
I knew you were going to fucking say that.
The Island of Dr. Moreau, significantly better film. I remember so much of The Island of Dr. Moreau. I haven't seen it for probably 5 years. I can remember almost that entire film. It is electric in a lot of ways. It's a mess, but it's electric. I think that Marlon Brando is genuinely fascinating in it, and Val Kilmer's Marlon Brando impression is incredibly mean, but also very good. And I'm sorry, I think that The Island of Dr. Moreau is a better film than On the Waterfront.
I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way, but that's like a patented insane Isabel take.
Oh, 100%.
But you're also in the tank for Richard Stanley is his name, right?
Massively, yes.
Okay.
I love him very much, or at least I like the films he makes. I don't know enough about him to feel comfortable saying I love him as a human being. Who knows? Maybe he's a terrible person.
Who's to say?
Going on his Wikipedia page, abuse allegation. Love that.
Uh-oh.
Cool. Looks like he has filed criminal complaints for libel versus that. I don't like that. Let's say that. I like his movies, but I very purposely did not vouch for him as a human being.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. I also haven't seen his Color Out of Space movie. I've heard it's good.
It's on my Plex. It's sitting there.
Yeah, it's been sitting on my Plex for about 5 years.
I'll get to it eventually, maybe. So, before we bury this movie.
Yes.
Because even though I'm more positive on this movie, I do like Some Like It Hot more. One of them is I really like the photography. I like the found sets. I like the lighting. I like the black and white. I think it's a very sort of visually... I like the austerity of the film. And, you know, the Brando performance is great. I like Ava Marie Saint. I like her better in North by Northwest.
Yes.
But what I really am into are the 3 main supporting performances. I really like Karl Malden, Lee J. Cobb, and Rod Steiger in these movies. Just 3 dudes tucking into good material. They're what I think of, or they're the kind of thing that I would think of when I think of strong sort of supporting actor turns in movies of this era. Very boisterous. And they've got mugs. Not mere faces, but mugs. Carl, I really like... Karl Malden has such a great face. We all know Rod Steiger. Rod Steiger looks like a sentient, brick house. But I really like... I like Karl Malden's presence in this movie. The politics... Yeah! The context... Ugh! I think this is the one and only Eli Kazan movie we have to contend with on this particular show. It's really tough to engage in that sometimes.
I mean, I like Baby Doll.
Oh, that's right. That's one of his, right?
Yeah. It's fucking weird. I enjoy it quite a bit.
I think I saw the cut version of that in school, specifically because it was the cut version of it. Because I think it was a class about censorship. And I was like, so here's the cut version of this movie. And here's all the stuff they took out. Or rather, here's all the stuff that they added. So yeah, I am in agreement with Orson Welles. This movie's really good, but I feel really weird about it. So I think no vetoes needed here. We are opening the doorway.
Good job, Billy Wilder. Finally, you get the stamp of approval from
yes,
probably the most important critics.
That's
right. I guess you already got the stamp of approval for The Apartment before. So,
yep, this is just...
second stamp, two stamp Billy.
So does this make Billy Wilder one of our guys?
I think so. I mean, they're both 5-star movies for me. I was already a big Jack Lemmon fan. You know, I enjoy me a grumpy old men, enjoy me a grumpier older men.
Not like Glengarry Glen Ross or...
That's also a very good movie.
All right, so now I think the hot take juice is gonna flow, or maybe it's not so hot anymore.
I think that like you know what? Let's not spoil the movie that we're not gonna like as much. Let's just let it happen naturally.
The 12 seed. That's 1, 2,
Fucking
3, 4, 5, 6,
insane.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now we know who votes on these fucking things. Forrest Gump. Released in 1994. Directed by Robert Zemeckis. Written by Eric Roth. Based on the book of the same title by Winston Groom. $55 million budget. Oh, wait a minute. I need to say the cast. Tom Hanks. Robin Wright. Gary Sinise. McKelty Williamson and Sally Field. $55 million budget. $678.2 million take at the old box office. 6 for 13 at the Academy Awards, including a Best Picture win, notorious because it beat assumed favorite Pulp Fiction for Best Picture. Versus the 245 seed at the tail end of the bracket, Paris, Texas, released in 1984, directed by Wim Wenders, and this fact I always forget for some reason, written by Sam Shepard.
Yeah.
And L.M. Kit Carson. Starring Harry Dean Stanton, Natasha Kinski, Dean Stockwell, Aurore Clément, and Hunter Carson. $1.8 million budget, $2.2 million take, so it got its money back. And not a ton of stats on this, but it did win the 1984 Palme d'Or, which is not nothing.
So
Forrest Gump.
Okay, Forrest Gump. Yep.
Where do we fucking start?
You know, probably like a 3 out of 5 stars. Is what I would have said maybe when I was like 15.
Sure.
Now I would call it one of the most evil movies I've seen.
I think I know why.
It's demonic. Genuinely, I think this film is evidence that there is terrible things in this universe, and they allow Forrest Gump to be made.
Okay, so I don't like this movie either, but I'm going to be a little less hyperbolic about it, which is no fun. But this is our relationship. So okay, I don't think Forrest Gump is a good movie, but it's a great Rorschach test, and it's a great text. It is kind of an addled text. Not just in the movie itself, but when you consider what it's adapted from. Because when you read the synopsis of the book it's based on, this movie, by all accounts, should have been way more like those fucking Clint Eastwood movies where he has that fucking orangutan buddy of his. It's the dude drifting,
any which way but loose.
Picking fights. Yeah, exactly. Any which way but loose. That's what it kind of feels like. This is not that. This is some other secret third thing. And I don't even think it is entirely Robert Zemeckis' fault, although it is in part Robert Zemeckis' fault.
I mean, it's essentially like treacle formed into the shape of a National Review article.
The National Review. Well, yeah. It's like, but it's not even, I don't even think it's that insidious. I think it's treacle that it feels more like Reader's Digest than the National Review.
I mean, the National Review is just Reader's Digest for people who think that they're smart. Let's be real. Okay. National Review has always been a rag. William F. Buckley Jr. was never a good writer. Not to scandalize any of our listeners.
You think
William
I have any
Buckley
National
Jr.
Review takes?
I don't know. I will say there was occasionally decent writers who wrote for them, but like some of their Catholic writers, I think were actually decent writers. This is a whole different pot of worms, pot of shrimp. Hey, did it.
Yeah, you did it.
But I think William F. Buckley Jr., besides being an odious human being, was just a shit writer. Have you ever read any of like Buckley's actual writing?
No.
Maybe you read God and Man at Yale. I don't know. Or was he the one Up From Liberalism? I believe so.
I think we go to different libraries.
Yep, it sure was Up From Liberalism. They are just the pettiest little like things I've maybe ever read. It's just like literally God and Man at Yale is him going, here's a specific professor who didn't actively say that God was the best thing ever every single class. Like, I'm not even joking. It's fucking insane. I do not recommend reading it. I do recommend listening to the episode of the Know Your Enemy podcast about it, because they get to all the interesting stuff. No, sorry. It was If Books Could Kill. There is a Know Your Enemy episode about William F. Buckley Jr. I'm getting off the reservation, I feel like.
I was going to say, and you also don't recommend the motion picture Forrest Gump.
I do not, no.
What strikes me about this movie, other than it's really easy to see how this is the most boomer movie I've ever seen.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I think it's like more than like The Big Chill, more than like anything else I can think of. Forrest Gump is the one. And part of it is like this treacle. Part of it is this whiplash tone that it can't really land. Because it has these really broad comic beats, and it has also just like this deep sadness and pathos. And a lot of the shit that you see in the movie was made up for the movie, presumably by Eric Roth. Like in the book, like Jenny don't get AIDS.
Yeah.
Like Abby Hoffman doesn't show up as far as I know. It's really like, we'll take the skeletal structure of this. Like, Forrest Gump is like, Forrest Gump in the book is just kind of like a brute. He's like Moose in the Archie comics more than anything else. And I want, like, maybe I go a little bit off track too, but has there been an actress in living memory that's been done as dirty in her career as Robin Wright?
God, yeah, it has been great actress. I think it's fair to say.
She's a talented actress.
Would you agree?
I like her. Yes.
We will soon enough watch The Princess Bride, which I think, spoilers, I think we both like that movie quite a bit.
We do.
But yeah.
It's really hard to be coherent about a movie like this because it feels so incoherent. Like, stuff keeps happening. But the thing with stories like this, where you have a protagonist where everything happens to them, but they don't really learn anything. Shit just happens to them. That's kind of like a rough way to tell a story. I like Tom Hanks. This is not... Because Tom Hanks, we promised all those ages ago a little riff about Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is just like a doofy comic actor for the first part of his life.
You should have stayed that way.
I like him as... He's not a dude with a lot of range. He's got a couple moves that he does very well. I don't know that he's one of the great actors. People would say that he's one of the great movie stars. But...
Some would say he's one of history's greatest monsters.
I mean, you would definitely say that. I'm very curious. I'm very curious as to, like... Is it like the selection... Is it the choice of movies?
Yes, it's very much the choice of movies. I think, like, when you are in this, which I will get to why I think this is a genuinely, like, evil film, you're in this, and then you're in fucking Charlie Wilson's War, which is maybe an eviler film. Like, good lord. And then you're in Saving Mr. Banks, and then you are also Mr. Rogers. It feels like you are making a play to be America's dad, but America's dad sucks. Except for Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers seems like a perfectly nice man that I have nothing negative to say about, but I think that's what makes it worse, is because so much of what else he plays are people who you're supposed to like, but then I just find deeply odious. And also, the fucking You've Got Mail, where he plays the gentrifier, as, like, the charming gentrifier. That is his role in that film. He's perfectly fine as an actor. I think there's a couple scenes in here that he's actually pretty solid in. I have praised The Green Mile up and down as well. There's things that happen in his career that are very good. I think that
he sells it.
Sure. Let's say that. I find this movie so despicable and like cruel. Like
it is cruel.
The way this film treats
Hanks,
Robin Wright is cruel.
100%.
And the fact that
it didn't have to be that way.
Yeah, the fact that his character, the character of Forrest Gump, does not understand what's happening to Jenny, makes it feel even crueler. Because there's like a part early on when she's essentially at that like nudie show playing her guitar. And in his internal monologue, he's like, oh, Jenny finally got to be like a singer. And it feels like, oh, he doesn't understand that she's a piece of shit. Kind of. I'm exaggerating slightly, but it does feel really mean-spirited. It feels just kind of like, okay, you didn't have to just having this other character here say, just vocalize to the audience what Jenny's dream was so that we can just watch her not have that dream.
Just faceplant.
It's just so mean. I mean, can I get into it a little bit?
Go for it. The floor is yours.
Okay. So, this film is fucking god-awful. It is kind of the most 90s film I could imagine in that it believes that there has been a huge amount of progress made. Essentially, we've solved racism. We've solved all these
very
things.
End of
and
history.
as long as... Yes, very end of history. And if you can just put on a suit and be normal, you can have a good life. But if you're Gary Sinise and you don't have legs, then you got to get legs first before you can become a good person. That's like that's Gary Sinise's arc. Is he's kind of a dick. He loses his legs and is even more of a dick. And then the last you see of him, he's finally cleaned up. He has a partner. She seems very nice, and he has legs again. Oh, wonderful. If you're able-bodied, you can be a nice person. If you are cleaned up, you can be a nice person. Robin Wright, when you're out there whoring it up, taking the drugs, being a hippie, hanging out with Black Panthers, you can't be happy. You can only be happy once you come back to the plantation, the old plantation house, where the only good black characters are servants to Forrest. Like, this is text of the movie. I'm not, like, extrapolating. This is what the movie directly on the surface is saying. And also the very fact that, like, Gump, for those who haven't seen the movie, Forrest Gump does a lot of things. And at some point, he comes to own a shrimping boat. And he's doing very, very poorly. Because he doesn't know how to fucking shrimp, because he's never done it before. Obviously. But he prays a bunch. And God decides, you know what, Forrest? You deserve to have a good shrimping business. So I'm going to cause a hurricane that destroys everyone else's livelihoods in this area, including all the black people who are also in church praying with you, so that you can have a successful shrimping company. Because I guess God prefers white people is kind of the point of that. Am I wrong?
I mean, Tom Hanks puts on a fucking Klan hood in the first 5 minutes of this movie. I don't kid when I say this movie's tonally weird.
Yeah, it's fucking... And then,
also, the special effects have not aged well.
No, they really have not. I like looking at if the film grain on Tom Hanks when he's inserted into that old footage is so jarring. He looks very strange in it. The explosion, I laughed out loud when I saw one of the explosions that happens in Vietnam. I think that the point of this film is essentially, if you go through life with a good heart and never do any of those evil things, like having sex or caring about politics, you will eventually become a millionaire and have the girl of your dreams. And she will die, but it's because she was an evil person too. And you turned her good at the end, but it was too late. Snap. How terrible. And that you will meet a bunch of people who will basically just be your servants, and they will be good. But anyone who opposes you, not so much. And you will meet exactly like 5 black people, and they will either be soldiers or servants when they're good, or they're going to be a Black Panther who will be background noise to you heroically saving your whore girlfriend.
Bobby Z not being
I will
the
say
rap on the weird race stuff.
Yeah. I will say one thing I did think was kind of hilarious was the Robin Wright, Jenny's boyfriend who hits her. That we see that like Tom Hanks breaks that up. He says, and I think what's supposed to be a serious way, a line that's basically just a line from In the Loop later on, where he's like, I'm sorry I hit you, you know, this crazy war going on, you know, I'm just kind of like all over the place. Like that's literally a joke in the Loop where a guy tries to justify him having an affair by saying that like, you know, I've been so, you know, with all the war and everything going on. I can't believe they put that in a movie and expected me to give a shit about it. That's a summary of all of it. And the problem is, even if it didn't have these issues, let's pretend for a moment that Forrest Gump was not incredibly like sexist and racist. I'm going to put myself in that world. It's still a movie that does not know how to turn off its music. Like for 2 fucking seconds, let me feel the emotions you're trying to make me feel and don't just shove them in my face with the music. That was a continual annoyance for me, because even when there was almost pathos generated, there's always those fucking, like, strings pumping up from behind to make sure, are you feeling it yet? Do you really feel it? Let's make sure you feel this emotion. It's so insulting. And then also, like you said, the tone moves so quickly back and forth between deadly serious and unbelievably goofy that it never strikes anything that actually works for me at all. The only time that the film kind of works is in 2 aspects. Number 1 is I think the scene where Forrest meets his son for the first time is well acted. Like the look on Tom Hanks' face, like his reaction feels very genuine, and I liked that. Look at that. I'm being a good person and praising this film in the small parts that actually worked for me. And number 2, I think it's a very funny recurring bit that in any like promotional photos of Forrest, he always has his eyes closed, like half closed or like in a really weird, funny facial position. It happens with like the was it Time or like Forbes cover? I forget what it was with him and Captain Dan. It happens with the standees he gets for like his ping pong thing. It happens with some of the pictures of him when he's running later. It's very funny. I actually did like that joke.
I believe it was a picture. I believe it was a cover of Fortune.
Thank you. So yeah, I would say that I'm not a fan of this film, Derek. It's demonic.
I mean, for what it's worth, I liked Gary Sinise in this movie.
It made me want to rewatch Mission to Mars, which is a movie I don't like. Because like while watching him in this movie, I was like, I wonder if I'd still hate Mission to Mars when I watched it again.
One of the lesser De Palmas.
Instead of thinking of the movie. I mean, according to some people, some of the better De Palmas. Some French people say that.
Yeah, some people really
French
go to
have
bat
opinions.
The French do have opinions. Mais oui.
I remember hating it when I saw it, but hey, maybe on rewatch I'll become a Brian De Palma head like so many others.
Are you not high on De Palma otherwise?
Hey, so I don't love him. I think that Blowout is a fucking incredible movie. I think that Snake Eyes is quite good. I like Scarface well enough. I like Carrie well enough. That's about as far as we go. All
right, so you're not a believer. You're not like a head.
No. I'm like, if you say, hey, this movie's directed by Brian De Palma, I'd be like, okay, I'll probably watch it.
All right.
I wouldn't be like, this is going to be terrible. And I wouldn't be like, oh shit, I have to watch that immediately. I did also want to, what do you call it? I actually wrote down my notes and I forgot to say it. I have my one allowed true tangent I need to do is about loosely related to Forrest Gump. So, are you, like, the Kennedy thing in Forrest Gump made me think about one of my favorite people I've learned about recently. Are you aware of Luis Walter Alvarez?
Luis Walter Alvarez? No, I am not.
So, he was an American physicist. And the reason that it made me think of the Kennedy thing made me think of him is that he was actually, like when the Kennedy assassination took place, he was very interested in it and really studied the Zapruder film. And one of the famous things in the Zapruder film that conspiracy theorists have pointed to as like, oh, there's something weird going on here, is that essentially Kennedy's head, instead of moving opposite the direction of like where the bullet enters, it moves towards the bullet, theoretically. So people said, aha, he couldn't possibly have gotten shot from behind. It must have been, I forget what angle he was shot from. Either way, it must have been the opposite angle. And Luis Alvarez was like, let me do experiments, because this might, instead of being a 2-body problem, might be like a 3-body problem kind of thing. And he investigated a bunch and realized that the jet of material that expelled from Kennedy's skull actually pushed his head the way it did. So it is completely logical that it went towards the bullet and not away from it. And him doing that, the kind of way he investigated that, ended up being incredibly influential on the entire field of like ballistics analysis, and has been corroborated by other researchers many times, which that's neat by itself. That's a fun story. He also was a Nobel Prize winner because he discovered resonance states using the hydrogen bubble chamber in particle physics. He also used particle I forget, I think it's like muon particles. I might be wrong. Either way. He used special kind of like muon tomography to look for underground chambers in the Egyptian pyramids. Turned out there weren't any. And then he also, this is the wildest one. So, Derek, do you know how the dinosaurs died?
Mass extinction event due to asteroid, correct?
Yes. Do you know how we know that?
Does Mr. Alvarez factor in some way?
He does. Him, his son, who's a geologist, and a couple nuclear chemists are the people who wrote the initial paper being like, hey, we think it was an asteroid impact. Here's the evidence based on material from the Cretaceous Paleogene boundary that we found. So not only did he win a Nobel Prize, invent essentially modern ballistic testing in a lot of ways, scanned the pyramids for secret chambers, and he also discovered how the dinosaurs went extinct. What a cool guy, right?
Some people don't waste their lives. That's a cool dude. So, Eric Roth, the writer of Forrest Gump, I would qualify as being a high-ceiling, low-floor guy. Because he's written a lot of movies that I like. Mainly the stuff that he's done with Michael Mann. Another high-ceiling, high-floor guy is German director Wim Wenders.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Michael Mann is a high-ceiling, low-floor guy. Michael Mann's never made a bad movie.
High-ceiling. Michael Mann has made... No, yeah, you're right. He's never made a bad movie. There's a couple that
he's made some movies I'm like,
not as good. There's a couple of movies that I'm not as high on, but even those are like 3.5s.
Yeah, same.
So no, a high-ceiling, high-floor guy is Wim Wenders, who is currently riding a pretty cold streak as far as I know. Like, he hasn't really... I think the last thing...
I've heard the new one's very good.
That's been... Apparently the new one's good, but he's been... Like, Pina, the documentary that came out a few years ago, was very well received. Yeah. But as far as, like, fiction filmmaking goes, kind of riding a cold streak. But I will always have season tickets to Wim Wenders because of this fucking movie. Not to spoil the bit, but Paris, Texas, I think, it's probably one of the 20 best movies ever made.
I do not think I would disagree with you.
Oh, good. Goody. I'm thrilled. So, what I love, among other things in this world, is I really like specific forms of Americana by non-Americans. Because they always give this either skewed or romantic or otherwise interesting view of the good old US of A. I think of stuff like the Leningrad Cowboys. I think of... it's not just movies. It could be stuff like, Mojave 3, which sounds very American, but they're a bunch of Brits. I think they're Brits. Were the Slow Dive people Brits?
Yes, I believe so.
Cool. So anytime that someone not from America is like, you know what? Time to make my American opus. There's always something for me there. And sometimes a German man and and 5, maybe not stars, but like 3 really good actors, a good bit player not speaking her mother tongue, and a pretty good kid performance, make just one of the most devastating and heartbreaking movies of all time.
Yeah, I just finished watching it like an hour-ish ago, and I assumed, you know what, last time I watched this movie, I cried like a baby. I bet, I know it's gonna happen. It won't be the same. It was exactly the fucking same.
It was exactly.
I was weeping by like the end of the movie. Essentially, just couldn't stop crying. It was, oh boy, it's real good.
So broadly speaking, this is a road movie.
Mm-hmm.
We open on the majestic American Southwest, or I guess this is Texas. So I guess this is is Texas part of the Southwest?
It is, yes.
Okay, cool. And we open on the inimitable tanned leather face of Harry Dean Stanton. He's just a dude in a desert walking. We don't know why he's there. He's looking for water. He finds it. He passes the fuck out. Next thing we know, we see Dean Stockwell. Those two are brothers. He's been away for 4 years. Why? Dean Stockwell and Aurore Clément have been taking care of Harry Dean Stanton's child. What happened? Where's the mother? Where's Nastasia Kinski? Nastasia Kinski does not appear in any form in this movie until like the 50th minute. This movie is emotionally devastating. It's beautifully photographed. Deep expressive use of color. One of the first things I did in film school was do sort of a very sort of loose comparative analysis of the use of the color red and the color blue in Paris, Texas, as sort of one color being Dean Stockwell and the other color being Harry Dean Stanton, like how it relates to the child character. Ry Cooder's score is fantastic, and
oh yeah,
it's just it's a deeply lived in, deeply wounded, it's deeply felt and a very soulful film. It's very warm, even though there's elements of it that are like just like that are sort of born of pain. And the I Knew These People scene is hands down my favorite scene in a movie. Just it's not particularly close.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. It's like wow, what a. I think the things that work so well for it is both it's pretty funny in parts.
Yes.
Like very charming and cute for moments. Like when the first time that Hunter and Harry Dean Stanton's character are walking home together, like on opposite sides of the street and mimicking each other. It's adorable. It's really like fucking cute. And it will contrast those. I mean, in almost a similar way to Forrest Gump in that it will contrast these very sweet and very goofy moments with just complete emotional devastation. But the thing about Paris, Texas is it works. And I think it works because, like you mentioned, it feels so lived in. We spend so much time with these people, and it really gives you that space to understand what their emotions are and why their emotions are the way they are, and lets you live with the things that have happened to them.
That's a good way of putting it. It benefits a lot from its smaller scale. It benefits a lot from being quiet. And in a way, one of Robert, like, regardless of his like merits and talents as a director, the thing that often gets in the way of Robert Zemeckis is this need to play with toys. Which is to say, I'm going to try like these narrative/technical gimmicks, which this is like barren of. This feels a lot more found. It's very lightly put together.
Yeah.
And also it's very wistful in a way that we keep... In Forrest Gump, we are constantly told and shown that, Forrest missed Jenny. It's like he wants to be with the person he loves. And that's said, but it's nowhere near as effective as just the way that it's sort of lived in Paris, Texas.
Yeah. There's nothing in Forrest Gump that even comes close to like when when Travis sees those movies for the first time with Jane in them, and he essentially sees her for the first time in 4 years on film, and sees the times that they were having together and them being happy together. Just seeing his face, seeing how he reacts to it, you understand it so much more, and it hurts so much more, and is so much more impactful. And I think one of the many reasons it works so well for me is that it doesn't get easier. I think that the film ends in a place that is in a certain way happy, but it doesn't just paper over everything to get there. You know that, and like the hardest part of the movie for me in many ways is, you know that the regrets these characters have are just going to be regrets forever. And they're not things that can ever be fixed, really. All you can do is keep going on and trying to make it better going forward. And you can't hold on to this past, even though this past was so good, and you want the past so much. I think like the first time I saw this, something I was maybe slightly frustrated by, that now I actually like a lot, is when Travis takes Hunter away from Anne and Walt.
Just fucks off.
Yeah, just fucks off, and then like we never see them again. Like we see the scene where Anne and Walt are really fucking upset that Hunter's gone, especially Anne, and Hunter says that she sounded really upset over the phone, and that's kind of it. Like their lives are just like that now.
Yep.
And it's just the matter-of-factness, I guess, of a lot of it kind of pins down what would otherwise maybe be melodramatic.
It's this thing where, like, surely, like, this is the depth of character we're talking about, right? So it's like, it's obviously a sense of like, well, he was never our kid to begin with. And they must have sensed that eventually this kid is not going to live here anymore. Like, someone's going to come back for him. And then it does. Because 4 years feels like a fucking eternity. 4 years might as well be 40. And then it's just not anymore. And it happens that fast.
Yeah, Travis asks, like, is 4 years a long time? And Walt says it is for a kid, it is for a little boy.
Hell, and 4 years is a long time for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a film that, like, watching it today, I was like, yeah, and we mentioned this when we recorded, spoiler alert, folks, we have recorded this same episode before, and Derek was kind enough to re-record this because the last time we recorded was 2.5 fucking hours long. And it's been sitting on my to edit pile for so long that I can't look at it anymore. So we're doing this as a makeup session, essentially. Mm-hmm. And he was nice enough to rewatch Forrest Gump. But that we mentioned this last time we talked, was the point of that sentence. That the older I get, the more I think this will impact me, even more than it does now. And coming back to it just a few years later, that is already true. Like, hey, the last time that I watched this movie, I was emotional, but I didn't cry when Jane and Hunter were reunited. My mom died in between those things happening, and I cried like a little baby seeing them together again, and seeing, Hunter reach out to her. It fucked me up really badly, in a way that, like, is good, to be clear, but was also like, wow, there's so much of this movie that as I get older and I tally up more things in my life that have happened, both good and bad, there's just so much more resonance over and over and over again.
The first time Hunter calls Travis dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck do you want me to do with that? Paris, Texas, good movie.
Yeah, I would, one of the best movies, I think it's fair to say.
It's like, Wim Wenders made this in Wings of Desire. He gets a lifetime pass. I don't care if he makes just direct now. I don't care.
Yeah, this is the kind of movie that earns you all-timer kind of status.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've also heard that Wings of Desire is quite fucking excellent as well.
It's fantastic. It's another one that I give the full 5 to.
And I've also heard good things about The American Friend, Kings of the Road. I've heard a lot of good things about some of his movies. Mm-hmm. Like you said, it definitely kind of petered off there for a while. But what do you call it? Perfect Days. I've heard genuinely really good things about, and I've heard comparisons to Patterson, which I know you and I are both
fucking love
very
Patterson.
high on Patterson. Yeah, incredible film.
I'm glad all my Adam Driver stock is finally fucking vesting.
Speaking of, hey, since we recorded last time, guess what stock of mine really cratered that I am sad I ever put that much into? It was Kanye West.
Yeah.
He was already having some bad problems by the time we spoke last, but he hadn't gone on Alex Jones's show and had a bottle of Yoo-hoo and a net and made a terrible pun about Benjamin Netanyahu. Like, that was his joke. Net and Yoo-hoo.
Oh my God.
Instead of Netanyahu.
Yeah, what are you doing?
And said that he loved Hitler and that Hitler invented microphone. Is that what I believe is what he said?
Microphone?
And the high microphones. Like, he says it like Hitler invented the microphone, essentially.
Okay.
It was a wild ride, let's say.
I mean, I had some Kanye stock, and it's not worth a whole lot anymore, I think.
I was all in for. I was even like, you know what? The fact that he's an asshole is kind of like what makes a lot of this more resonant, and that just kept going and going and going to the point where I had to sell all of it for essentially pennies because no one wants it anymore.
Did you get anything nice back
once
with
you
it?
hang out? I got some small deniability.
I mean, your Charlie XCX stock is doing okay. There's at least that.
Oh yeah, that one's doing pretty darn well.
As far as your sort of A-level pop stars go.
Yeah, I got in on that early. To be fair,
You did
I got
get
in on that
early.
with
That's
Nuclear
true.
Seasons. Yeah.
Man, what stock have I? Man,
Apparently, my Richard Stanley stock went fucking tits up.
It just fucking plummeted. Man, who was I buying? Who was I all in on several years ago? Anyway, doesn't matter. This is why I deleted all my tweets. That's why I'm not on Twitter anymore.
No, you're on X.
No,
I will never call. I will dead name Twitter forever.
Oh, 1,000%.
I'm going to be transphobic towards Twitter in this specific sense.
Which is just as well.
Just like I'm never going to call Facebook Meta.
Right.
It's going to be Facebook.
I mean, it's probably just as well that you're transphobic towards Twitter because Twitter is surely transphobic towards you.
Oh, absolutely. God, fucking. I mean, I will say it's been a good time to watch billionaires just fuck up.
Sure.
That's been entertaining to some degree. It would be great if they didn't have like complete control over all of our lives, but you get the little satisfactions when you can.
So, Paris, Texas, congratulations. You move on to the next round. You will be facing Some Like It Hot.
An upset.
Yeah, technically an upset. A big upset, too.
Yeah.
So in a future episode, let's say, Some Like It Hot versus Paris, Texas. An intriguing matchup.
Fun fact, guess what film is no longer on the IMDb Top 250?
I'm going to be very surprised if you say The Shawshank Redemption.
Paris, Texas.
Oh, interesting. Well, here's the thing, it was really low on the list, right? So with with the yearly churn, that would make sense. It's probably like in the top 300 or something like that now.
Oppenheimer's 21.
But recency bias and all that.
Yeah, recency bias.
Like Incredibles 2.
I haven't seen Oppenheimer. I saw Barbie, which I like quite a bit.
I thought Barbie was pretty good. I also liked. I don't think like Oppenheimer is like a 5-star masterpiece, but I also quite liked Oppenheimer. But that's because I'm in the pocket of Big Nolan.
Dances with Wolves is on there now at 250.
I'm pretty. Was it not on our list? I
don't believe so. I really hope I don't have to watch Dances with Wolves.
Yellowstone, baby. That's a guy whose stock went up. Kevin Costner. Everyone in Flyover Country loves fucking Yellowstone.
Dances with Wolves is not on the list.
Interesting. So this is my suggestion for real. When we get to the end of this thing, I want to do a gauntlet. We'll crown our champion on this list. And then our champion, WWE Royal Rumble style, will be the last entrant in like a movie battle royale. When we're going to take all the movies that are on the current list, but not on our list, and just kind of go through them in one episode. Like, it's going to be a lot of prep. we'll have to watch maybe like 30 movies. But the idea being, so of this group of 4 movies, which is worse? It gets bumped. New one comes in. Which is the worst of these movies? It gets bumped. New one comes in. Until we get to the Battle Royale champion, as it were.
I mean, I am up for that. I feel like it might be a minute.
It'll be a minute. I'm just saying that we have to have a contingency plan for all these movies that have come out and are on the list now that we do have to deal with, because it is the IMDb Top 250.
Oh, some of these are kind of wild. I'm like looking through some of the new entries.
The current
There's
one?
apparently an animated film from 2019 called Claus. It's about like Santa Claus.
That's
seems to be
apparently
Spanish
that's like,
Cruise.
Apparently that's
Spanish
like
director.
A new Christmas classic. This is not the first I've heard of this movie.
Well, it is number 177.
That's
pretty high
wild. So the next 4 on our list, the matchups are as follows. It is going to be Toy Story versus The Deer Hunter.
God, I gotta rewatch The Deer Hunter, which isn't necessarily because it's bad, but it's so fucking long.
It's also kind of a bummer. And Casablanca versus Barry Lyndon.
That
Some heavy hitters in the next game.
Yeah, I mean, no spoilers, but I like at least one of those movies, if not more.
I would say that at the very least, I like all of those movies.
I mean, I don't want to give it away to people.
Oh, of course not. There's some fun ones coming up, like down the pike. We got
maybe I hate Barry Lyndon. Maybe that'll be my hot take. Like Barry Lyndon, dog shit. That would just get me permanently canceled from Film Twitter or Film X.
Film X.
Film Blue Sky.
Film Blue Sky. Oh boy.
Oh wow. The Hamilton movie is number 111.
The Hamilton movie.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
People love that. People love that shit. I don't see the appeal, but people love it.
I don't know, man.
It's fine. Maybe eventually we'll watch it.
I mean, if this works how I think it's going to work, and if it stays where it is, because that movie is a few years old, so
yeah. Unless
it gets sort of outclassed by movies from the next couple of years, we might have to watch Hamilton, the taped musical. And
I really don't want to. Oh, Joker's still on here. Joker's in the top 100 still.
Interesting. Barry Lyndon will
adequate
barely
film.
like it.
Good one.
All right, so so this is the point where we do plugs. Except now I barely have anything to plug anymore.
Yeah, I don't. If you want to find me on Blue Sky, it's the same as my X account. It's Lilies Without. Just search for Lilies Without. You'll either find a delightful book of poetry, or you'll find my Twitter / Blue Sky. I'm not doing shit on them, but hey.
Listen,
I might eventually start doing the other podcasts I have at some point if I can get Juan to get off their fucking ass and figure out when time works. But
Hollywood Juan Barkeen. Too good for their old fucking friends.
Can't watch
fucking
porn
typical.
with their friends anymore.
Now shout out to JB.
Juan, we love you.
The thing with Juan is that I'm glad that Dim the House Lights happened, because at the very least, it served as a springboard for JB. Because JB's doing actual stuff now. And just because my dream failed doesn't mean that their dream can't succeed. And on that cheerful note.
Real quick. I was completely unaware that in that Klaus movie, do you know whose voice is in that?
Is it Paul Giamatti?
Possibly. I was looking at one person specifically. Dearly departed Norm Macdonald apparently has a voice in that.
Oh, well.
R.I.P. Norm. We love Norm Macdonald here.
We do. If you listen, if you
watch Dirty Work.
I actually rewatched during our hiatus. I rewatched Dirty Work. That is possibly the most stupid movie I've ever seen, but it's very funny.
Yes.
Listen, if you want to know what I'm doing, I'm not doing a whole hell of a lot out here. I'm not on Twitter anymore. I ain't been on Tumblr in years. DerekGoddard.com. That's where all my shit is. If you're interested, I am not a hard person to find. If you're interested in interacting with me in any way, you can find me.
You know, Derek,
I'm not hiding.
They say a good man is hard to find, but I got you right here. Take that, Flannery O'Connor.
But yeah, I mean, listen. How the fuck do we end these? Because that's basically plugs, right?
More or less, yeah. Like if you happen to be in the exact place I am in Colorado, I'm not going to tell you where that is because that invites problems.
Sure.
But if you happen to see me on the street, be like, hey, I like your podcast, and don't be weird about it. And I'll be like, hey, I like you, or I like that you like my podcast. I don't want to vouch for you. I don't want this to turn into a Richard Stanley situation.
Oh, man.
But, yeah.
Oh, I guess we should
say hi to my cats or something. I don't know.
I guess we should also say, if you want to email something to us, middlebrowpod@gmail.com is still an ongoing concern. You could follow the show on Twitter @middlebrowpod as well. I don't know if anyone's watching that.
If I can log into it again. I'll figure out how to log into it again.
Sure.
When I do the whole
if somehow you're new here, join the Discord.
We're sorry?
Which is very
Oh yeah, we have a Discord.
Which is very quiet, but it definitely exists. And I can't believe they still allow us to put our shit up because we haven't recorded in 25 months. But do follow other shows on the Noise Space Podcast Network. I guarantee you that those people do not know we are still alive. Matt Ribeiro thinks I'm dead.
He liked some of my posts recently, so hey. I'm still posting. I'm still posting up a storm.
I'm not.
I'm not either. I'm posting on occasion.
My posting days are behind me. So we have set up next week. We have set up the ways
Ronin.
for you to... You're posting Ronin. A real Clint Eastwood in any which way but loose. I think we did all the stuff that we have to do at the end of the show, which means the only thing that we need to do is our outro, which usually starts with
I've been Isabel Arf.
And I've been Derek Gade. Have movies, be jolly.
Have movies, be jolly. Good night, friends, comrades, colleagues, and family.
And
enemies.
And motherfuckers, we're back!
Hey, let's not get carried away. Oh shit, fuck. Oh my god, no. Oh god. Sorry, I was opening up the page for the podcast, and it opened some other things. I'm very confused right now.
Is it pornography?
No, it's not pornography, but thank you for assuming it's pornography. I mean, it usually would be, to be fair.